Family fought over the business. My cousin mocked. He'll probably turn it into a joke shop. Then the accountant whispered, actually, it's already making more than yours. Even Grandma gasped. You don't expect your family to laugh in your face when you inherit part of your grandfather's legacy. But mine did. Right there at the long walnut table in the conference room of the Kerrigan building, the family's pride and monument. When Grandpa Harold passed, he left me a single store. Not just any store. The dumpy, dust-covered, half-forgotten location in the old north end of Burlington, Vermont. My cousin Royce, with a smirk that still makes my jaw tense, muttered under his breath, he'll probably turn it into a joke shop. Everyone laughed, except Grandma, and the accountant, who cleared his throat an hour later and dropped the bomb. Actually, it's already making more than yours. The air in the room shifted like thunder before a storm. Even Grandma gasped. What no one knew then was that I'd already been quietly rebuilding that place from the inside out. Alone. No fanfare. No funding from the family pot. Just hard work, community word of mouth, and treating people like they mattered. They all wrote me off before I even started because I wasn't one of them. Because I didn't go to business school, didn't marry into money, didn't wear loafers or throw around corporate buzzwords like vertical integration. But when I tell you that the moment the accountant said those words, and the smugness drained from Royce's face like someone pulled the plug on his ego, I swear, it was the first time I felt seen by my own blood. When Grandpa Harold died, everything fractured. Not suddenly. The cracks had always been there, running under the surface of our family like hairline fractures in old porcelain. But death? Death puts everything under a microscope. The family business, Kerrigan Automotive Supply, had been passed down for 3 generations. What began as one-part store on North Winooski Avenue in the late 60s turned into a small local empire. 7 stores across Vermont, a fleet of delivery vans, even a parts refurbishing warehouse just outside Middlebury. I grew up around brake pads and carburetors, but nobody ever pictured me running anything. Not even me. That wasn't bitterness. It was just the truth. I was the son of the other Kerrigan. My dad, David, was Harold's middle child. Quiet, detail-oriented, not flashy. He did the books, the logistics, the boring stuff that kept everything afloat. But when I was about 13, something happened between him and Grandpa. They argued behind closed doors. I remember once hearing the phrase, "You're a damn Kerrigan, not a charity worker." After that, we stopped showing up at family events. My cousins, Burke, Royce, and Nolan, became the faces of the next generation. I didn't even get a call when Dad died. Not one cousin at the funeral. Not Grandma. Not a card. Nothing. I was 28 then. I'd been freelancing graphic design gigs and shooting weddings on weekends. Nothing steady. Nothing anyone would call a career. But I paid my rent. I lived simply. Quietly. Nobody expected much from me. So imagine the shock when the lawyer read Harold's will and said, "And to my grandson, Daniel Kerrigan, I leave the North End location in full." There was silence. Then Royce burst out laughing. "He'll probably turn it into a joke shop," he said, elbowing Nolan. Burke just leaned back in his chair, folded his arms, and smirked. I kept my face still. Said nothing. Just nodded once. I think that pissed them off more than anything. The old North End location hadn't turned a profit in 5 years. It looked like it belonged in a post-apocalyptic movie. Dusty shelves, flickering fluorescent lights, a flickering neon, open sign barely clinging to life. The store manager had retired 6 months prior, and the only 2 employees left were Mr. Hanley, a gentle older man who'd been with the company since '87, and April, a college student from UVM who worked weekends to pay for her books. On paper, it was a joke, but I saw something different. The old North End was changing. New families were moving in. DIY mechanics, artists, bike enthusiasts, urban homesteaders. They didn't want corporate polish. They wanted authenticity, knowledge, trust. I didn't overhaul the store overnight. I didn't have the money, but I rolled up my sleeves. First, I cleaned. Spent my first 3 weekends scrubbing shelves and windows until my knuckles hurt. Then I rebranded, just a soft refresh. New signage with vintage flair. I started a Facebook page. Posted pictures of old parts, customer stories, DIY tutorials. I added a tiny coffee nook near the front with stools and a stack of local magazines. April designed the logo on her iPad. Mr. Hanley taught me how to balance the books. We made it work. We hosted a Fix-It Saturday. It was a total gamble. We told locals, bring anything mechanical, lawnmowers, bikes, kitchen fans, and we'd help fix it for free. People came. Not a crowd, but enough. Enough to fill the parking lot. Enough for the neighbors to talk. We did another the next month. And another. Business ticked up. A local news blog did a feature on us, the little auto store that could. I didn't tell anyone in the family. A year passed. Then came the invitation, the annual Kerrigan Family Business Review. I'd never been invited before. The cousins usually handled it, presenting spreadsheets and strategies over brunch at the Hotel Vermont Conference Suite. But this year, for some reason, my name was on the agenda. I almost didn't go. But April said, make them look you in the eye. I wore my only blazer, pressed my shirt, and walked into that oak-paneled room like I belonged, though my stomach was in knots. Royce saw me first. Hey, look who decided to show up. His voice carried just enough sarcasm to raise eyebrows. Burke leaned into Nolan and said something I didn't hear. They laughed. I kept walking. Grandma was already seated at the head of the table. She looked smaller than I remembered. Age seemed to fold her inward. But her eyes were sharp. She gave me the faintest nod. They went through the usual motions. Burke presented his growth numbers, which had dipped. Nolan talked about restructuring delivery routes. Royce bragged about launching a customer loyalty app. Then Alan, the family's accountant, stood. He adjusted his glasses. Clicked to the next slide. And now, the North End location. I held my breath. Alan cleared his throat. The North End store, operated by Daniel Kerrigan, saw a net revenue increase of 61% over the past fiscal year. Burke blinked. Nolan sat up. Royce laughed awkwardly. Alan continued, that location now holds the highest net profit margin among all 7 stores. The room went dead silent. Alan looked up. Actually, it's already making more than yours, he said, glancing directly at Royce. Even Grandma gasped. I didn't say a word. Not because I was being modest, but because I didn't trust my voice. Every nerve in my body was tight as wire. I kept my eyes on the screen while Alan moved on to the next slide, breaking down margins and revenue per square foot. It was clear that the other stores were stagnating. My little dumpy shop? It was pulling ahead, not just itching, but outpacing. Hold on, Royce said, raising his hand like we were in a damn classroom. This doesn't make sense. The old North End store didn't even have a functioning PS system last year. Alan replied with that accountant tone, measured, fact-based, dry. It was replaced 7 months ago. Daniel submitted receipts and upgraded the register system. It's fully digitized now. And the customer growth? Nolan asked, visibly annoyed. Where are they coming from? That neighborhood barely has traffic. Alan didn't even glance at me. Social engagement. Word of mouth. Local press. They've developed a consistent monthly uptick in both foot traffic and repeat customers. Burke scoffed and leaned back, crossing his arms. So what? Now we're saying this guy, he gestured at me without even using my name, has the best performing store because he sells spark plugs with a latte on the side? That got a few chuckles. I could have jumped in. Could have explained how I built it up from scratch. How I took nothing and reinvested every cent back into the store. How I taught myself QuickBooks at night, rewired the light fixtures myself, even laid new floor tiles over the cracked linoleum. How I slept in the back room some weekends when we had late shipments and no one to open in the morning. But I didn't say any of that, because they wouldn't have heard it. Instead, I looked at Grandma. She was staring straight at me, not smiling, not frowning, just watching. Alan finished the presentation and sat down. The room sat in that weird silence where nobody wants to admit what they're thinking. The Golden Boy cousins had been outpaced by the black sheep, and they didn't know how to process it. I want to know how, Nolan finally said. Seriously, I want to know what you're doing that's working. Like, tactically. I opened my mouth to respond, but Royce jumped in. Let me guess. He slapped up a chalkboard menu, put on some indie music, and called it a vibe. Please. This isn't a business model. It's a phase. That's when Grandma spoke. Royce. One word, but sharp enough to shut him up. Then she turned to me. Daniel, tell us what you've done. It was the first time she'd addressed me in a family meeting. Ever. I spoke slowly. Not because I wanted to be dramatic, but because I wanted them to hear every word. I treated the store like a neighborhood service, not just a parts shop. I fixed what was broken physically and otherwise. I gave people reasons to stop by even if they weren't buying. I earned trust. Then I asked them what they wanted. And I listened. That's marketing fluff, Burke said. Where's the business strategy? I looked at him. Calm. I made the business personal. You all sell parts. I sell help. Silence. And then, Alan cleared his throat again. There's one more thing I should mention, he said. I still on his tablet. Daniel's store also saw the lowest employee turnover, highest customer retention, and he managed it on the smallest operating budget. That did it. Royce pushed back from the table. His chair scraped the wood with a loud screech. This is a joke, he snapped. What? Now we're all supposed to learn from the guy who got handed a sympathy store? My hands clenched under the table. I kept my voice even. You all said I'd turn it into a joke shop. So maybe the joke's on you. Royce stepped toward me, eyes flashing. You think one good year makes you part of this business? We've been holding this family together for years. You've been writing its name, I said, before I could stop myself. He froze. Burke stood, trying to regain control. Okay, enough of this. Grandma, this isn't productive. We should table this for another. No, she said quietly. Let him speak. Every eye turned to me again. So I told them about the partnerships with the local college to give students hands-on mechanical training. About the deal I made with the co-op farm to maintain their delivery vans in exchange for produce. About the Sunday clinics for single parents to learn basic car maintenance, free of charge. And then, just to twist the knife a little deeper, I dropped one more piece. I was approached by a downtown landlord. He's offering a second space. He heard about what we're doing. Said I could name my rent. Alan looked up, interested. The cousins? Silent. I wasn't bragging. I was proving a point. They had power. But I had value. Royce didn't respond right away. He just stood there, hands on his hips, like he was trying to think of the right insult to throw at me. But he couldn't find one. Not with Grandma watching. Not with the accountant still holding the numbers in front of him like a mirror no one could look away from. Eventually, he let out a breath and sat down hard. No words. Just the quiet thud of someone realizing the spotlight was no longer theirs. Alan resumed, cautiously, if there's interest in exploring Daniel's business model across other locations, I can draft a proposal. Wait, Burke cut in, leaning forward. You're saying we should start taking advice from him? Just because of one fluke year? I turned to him, calm. Burke, it wasn't a fluke. It was work. The kind nobody noticed because you thought I wasn't worth noticing. Nolan gave a bitter chuckle. You've got no idea what it takes to scale. It's different when you're managing more than one store. You get that, right? I nodded. That's why I turned the second space offer down. That got their attention. You turned it down? Royce narrowed his eyes. I did. Not because I couldn't do it, but because I wanted to prove I could fix one thing completely before chasing another. That's something this family never did, follow through on anything not tied up in ego. There it was. The real reason things had turned out the way they did. Ego. That was the business the rest of them had inherited. Not just parts and tools, but pride and entitlement. They were running their stores like they were running a legacy, not a business. They were assuming the Kerrigan name would carry them through. But I didn't have a name. Not really. Not the way they did. So I built something else. That was the revenge. Not spite. Not sabotage. Just becoming undeniable. Grandma finally spoke again. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the tension like a wire through glass. I think it's time we stop pretending the past guarantees the future, she said, looking from one cousin to the next. Harold didn't leave Daniel that store as a favor. He left it to the only one of you who knows how to serve people. Silence. Then she turned to me. If you're open to it, Daniel, I'd like you to oversee the customer service training for all our locations. Royce let out an audible exhale and opened his mouth to argue, but Grandma didn't give him the chance. This isn't a request, she added. It's a direction. I looked around the room. Royce. Silent. Nolan. Tight-jawed. Burke. Staring at the table like the wood grain held answers. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. But something in me, something old and bruised and buried deep, loosened for the first time in years. Okay, I said. I'll do it. That summer, I started leading workshops for the other store managers and floor staff. I didn't walk in with a clipboard or try to boss anyone around. I just talked to people, asked them what their stores needed, what their customers were asking for, what they wished they could do but weren't allowed to. You'd be surprised how many of them had ideas that were ignored. I helped them set up repair clinics like mine. We added free tool libraries. We hosted local mechanic meetups and vendor nights. I taught them how to tell their stories online, not just list their inventory. Some changes worked. Some didn't. But the attitude began to shift. And slowly, so did the culture. Even Nolan admitted it during one late session. We just assumed the name was enough, he said, shaking his head. You reminded people why the name used to matter. It wasn't easy. Resentments lingered. I never became best friends with my cousins, and honestly, I didn't want to. But over time, they stopped rolling their eyes when I walked in. Royce never said sorry. But the next time we crossed paths at a vendor expo, he didn't ignore me. He actually nodded. Small, but it was something. It's been 2 years since that first meeting. The old North End store is now the flagship, officially recognized across the Kerrigan chain. We didn't expand by copying it. We expanded by learning from it. Grandma set up a new position for me, Director of Community Engagement. Sounds corporate, but I made it mine. April now runs the North End store. Henley drops in sometimes, just to visit and drink free coffee. I still live modestly, still bike to work most days, still answer emails myself. But here's the thing. I don't feel like the black sheep anymore. I'm still different. Still the artsy one. Still not flashy. But now, I'm the one they call when something's broken and no one else knows how to fix it. And that's the sweetest revenge of all. Because I didn't beat them by tearing them down. I beat them by building something better.